Greenaway. So welcome to today's session. This is one of our etc. talks, and this is the first of a new term of talks. So the etc. program is part of the Draw Brighton online program. It's completely free and it's open to everybody. So thank you for joining us live. But this is also recorded. So for those of you that are joining on the recording, it's lovely to have you watching as well. And these are really kind of complementary to our online Zoom life drawing and portrait drawing sessions that we offer through our Patreon. And it's just an opportunity to get to know some different artists' work, to introduce you to different practicing artists across a wide range of different disciplines, and to be able to spend an hour digging into that artist process. So we've had a whole series of different artists over the last 5 years giving talks. There we are, on the etc. program. And we've got a really exciting lineup for the year ahead, which we'll be gradually announcing through our social media and through our Patreon. So firstly, thank you to all of our Patreon supporters who help to fund these talks and make them available to everybody. And thank you to all of you, whether you're a Patreon supporter or not, for coming and joining us today, because the important thing is that we are sharing the artwork of the artists in focus. And so it's brilliant to have you all here. Now, I'm going to shortly switch over to Emma and say hi. So our Artist in Focus this month is Emma Carlisle. Many of you know her from her various different online presences, or from her picture books, or from a variety of different sources. So we've known each other through the online sphere for quite a while, but this is the first chance we've actually had to talk properly. So Emma, it's such a treat to have you here tonight. Would I be able to switch over to your screen?
Yeah, please do.
Brilliant, welcome. And I wonder if you'd be able to just introduce yourself for those that don't know you.
So hi everyone. I can see some people I know in the little uh, videos. So hello, hi Julie, I see you. It's lovely. Thank you so much for coming. There's so many of you here this evening. I've just seen how many of you are here, and I don't think I should have looked, but thank you so much for coming along. My name's Emma. I'm an illustrator and an author. I primarily illustrate for children's picture books, but I also have a Patreon as well. And yeah, I'm excited to share a little bit tonight. I'm going to share sort of the first half is kind of my creative journey up until picture books, up until how I got to what I'm doing now in picture books. And then the second half is quite nice. I've put in some slides of some personal work that I've done. Some of that is live drawing, and then some of that is my printmaking. And I'm kind of really excited to share that because that's the stuff I don't really get to talk about or share very often. So it's going to be like a talk of two halves, really, I suppose. But please do ask questions. It'd be really nice to have a bit of a discussion and chat as we go through. So yeah, I'll get sharing. I'll get started. I'm really excited to be able to share some of this work because I think as an illustrator or an artist, we make so much work. And then even when I was putting this together, I was like, I need to keep it down to an hour. We're keeping it down to a set where, we're trying to restrict how many slides we're showing this evening. So even when I was putting this together, I kept just cutting stuff and taking it out. So I want to sort of start this by saying that this is a little bit of a highlights reel. And in between all of this drawing that I'm going to share, there's like 100, for every good drawing, there's 100 bad drawings probably, or like 50 bad drawings or 20 bad drawings. Or so please don't look at this and go like every drawing is, that I only did sort of the amount of drawings that I'm sharing within this talk. There's so many more sketchbooks and so many more drawings that kind of go alongside this. But I thought I would start with my BA, which is sort of the two images on the left-hand side. And I've shared the work I was doing in my third year at Plymouth University on the illustration course. I didn't actually know I wanted to do children's books or narrative until my third year at university, was end of second year. I really wanted to be like a cool, edgy, trendy illustrator is what I desperately wanted to be cool. We got invited to do a 24-hour comic which I have made some of my patrons do since, but I will not be doing again. I can't stay awake for 24 hours anymore. But I was really lucky. I got to go to the Eden Project and stay at the Eden Project overnight to work on this 24-hour comic. And I made this comic about these monkeys that stole bananas. And I pinned the whole comic up at the end of the night, and someone was like, wow, that's a really nice children's book. And I sort of desperately tried to not do children's books. And then it got to the point where I was like, you know what, maybe I should just lean into this because everyone's seeing my work as for children's books. And around that same time, we'd also been to Bologna Book Fair, which is the biggest children's book fair in the world. And it opened my eyes, I think loads of my classmates' eyes as well, to what children's books could be, because children's books that we're presented in the UK is just such a small percentage of what children's books can actually be from around the world. So the slide on the image on the left is what I had at my graduation show in London. So I had this children's book work at the top. And then I'd also made a comic about a sex dungeon, which had been found in a town near us. I went to uni in Plymouth. My mum sent me this newspaper article. She does not live in Devon, but she'd found this newspaper article, and it was something like sex dungeon found in sleepy Devon town. And I just thought it was really, really funny. My third year project was just about making as many books as possible, narratives as possible. So I made 2 books about this newspaper article. One was this sort of inky work that you can kind of see in the photograph. And then I also did this screen printed book, which I did in blue and red. And my tutors were saying, like, go and research. Do you want to research what this looks like? And I was like, no, I'm just going to make it up in my head. So I I don't still not quite sure, but this is what I thought it would be. And then so I got to the end of my third year, and I was wanted to do. I got picked up by a children's book agency from this portfolio of work that they saw in London, and I knew I thought I'd like to go do children's books, so I applied and I got onto the children's book illustration MA in Cambridge, and it was the first 6 weeks of that course was observational drawing. So they'd send us out drawing outside. I ended up going down to London Zoo. I'd never lived so close to London before, so for me it was like such a treat to go down on the train and draw in the giraffe house at London Zoo. And I'll chat a little bit more about that on my next slide. But through doing that course, they took us back out to Bologna Book Fair, and I had been working on this book called Lion Practice, which got picked up I had sort of 6 publishers interested from Bologna. And Lion Practice was the first book that came out in 2015. So I ended up getting a new agent. I'd left my then agent, or I'd been kicked out of my then agency that I signed up with after uni. I got a new agent, and we signed a 2-book deal from Macmillan, and I did from just after going into my second year of my MA, I was working on Lion Practice, and then as I finished the MA, I was working on Bears at the Beach, and that came out in 2016. So I did that work, and it's weird to show it now because it's so distant to what I do now. But I think it's important to show it because I kind of felt like, especially when I graduated my BA, I felt like I had to have it all together and all sorted out. And then when I graduated my MA, I felt like I had to have it all together and know my style, like how I was going to work. I felt like I needed to know that then. But actually, I think it's really important to show this work because you never stop developing the way of working. Like there's never an end point really of that development of drawing. And you know, I don't work like this anymore at all. But once I'd graduated, and I'd had these 2 books out, I made the books, and then my agent was saying, like, what's next? What are you going to do next? And my publishers were like, what are you working on? And again, like, no one had told me that what you're meant to, what you should do is when you're doing children's books is then work on the next book, like have an idea for another book so you can pitch another book. So I
Straight
pitched,
away.
yeah, I would say like if you want to keep working in children's books, it's always good to have sort of the next one ready to go. And I had nothing. So there was a big gap between me finishing that Bears at the Beach book, which would have been finished in 2015. And then my agent kept pushing me. And all I was doing is I was making work when she was asking me to make work. At the same time, I started lecturing at Plymouth Uni on the illustration course. But I was making this work, but I didn't love it. There was something I really did not love the work I was making. There was no heart in it. And I just felt like I was making the work I was meant to be making it instead of like the work I should be making instead of the work I wanted to be making. I just tested how to do this. And
And I mean, at that point as well, having produced, commissioned books, did you feel like an illustrator? Because you were talking about this earlier, the sort of idea of the identity of the artist, and
uh, I don't actually know what. No, I don't think so. I think if someone asked, I'd say I was an illustrator at that point, but I wouldn't necessarily say now that I was illustrating. I think because I wasn't really working on any projects, and I didn't work on a picture book. The next picture book I worked on was What Do You See When You Look at a Tree? So that was 5 years, like a big 5 year gap in my illustration career of not illustrating something. But yeah, we were chatting just before, and I was saying that this now is the first time I feel in my career like an illustrator. And I said that to Phil this week, which I mean, maybe that sounds mental, but that's how I feel. Like I genuinely feel like an illustrator. But so this work then this is from 2018. So there is a bit of a gap here. And I know I am putting a few big gaps in this, but I do want to chat about, I want to move through some of this a little bit faster. But if you do have questions, please do ask if I go over anything too quickly. But in 2018, I had a really bad time mentally. I suffered from a mental breakdown in 2018, and I really didn't. I've talked about it a lot publicly before. It's quite hard to talk about now because I have it almost feels very disconnected now. But if you are struggling at the moment and you're going through a tough time, I would really recommend reaching out to professionals and talking through it and connecting with people. At the time, I didn't know if I wanted to continue being an illustrator or not, or if I should just quit everything altogether. That was I was at a real crossroads where I was like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, or if I'm just going to quit everything. At the time, I left my then agent and I shut my Etsy shop, and I sort of sat there. I remember sitting there and thinking, we'll give it a go. Like, why not just give it a go for 6 weeks? I tried to think to myself, what was the last time I was happy within my illustration work? And it was when I was drawing in that giraffe house at London Zoo in that 6 weeks, drawing on location on my MA. So I set myself sort of a 6-week project of drawing on location. And these are some of the drawings that I was doing when I first went out. So some of these they're not in the right order, but some of them I used to just take my sketchbook out and I would walk. I lived in Plymouth. I could get onto the coast path quite easily, but I would also just take it out to coffee shops and sit, and I would just draw. And people would ask me why I was doing it, and I didn't really have a reason why, but I just giving myself just that parameter of it's a sketchbook, it's a pencil, and you have to go out and draw from life was probably the best thing I could have ever done. And I was just going around. So these are from 2018, and you can see these are sort of ones I've picked. Again, this is a bit of a highlight reel of sketchbooks, but there were a lot of bad drawings in these sketchbooks. But I've picked the ones, they kind of go left, almost like there's a gutter, and imagine there's a gutter in the middle of this screen, but I've got like these picture book spreads on the left, which are all in pencil, and then you can see how I've started to pick up color and add color to the work, and that reflected how I was feeling mentally as well. The more I went out and drew, the more confident I was feeling and the better I was feeling mentally. So again, like I've skipped forward a little bit now, but those 6 weeks turned into 6 months, and I ended up at the end of the year, at the end of, so New Year's Eve, December 2018, I decided I was going to continue this project because there wasn't really anything for me to go back to. There was no illustration work. I'd still shut my Etsy shop. I was making ceramics before I started doing all this, and I'd sold my kiln, and I was lecturing 2 days a week, and that would just about cover my bills and take me back down to the bottom of my overdraft. But I was like, well, why don't you just keep going for another 6 weeks? And that turned into sort of the rest of the year. And I don't think that project's ever really stopped, really. I think it's just kept going indefinitely. But the work on the left-hand side is, again, like you can see the confidence building the more I'm going out drawing. And around this time, I sprained my ankle, and I couldn't get out drawing anymore. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And someone said, why don't you just draw from photos? You can draw from photos, that's okay. So I started drawing from photographs. And then that year, 2019, in March, I went to Bologna Book Fair. I got funding from my university course to take 3 students out to Bologna Book Fair. And I was there to represent them. But I also took this sketchbook, so the one on the left-hand side, the collection of work on the left-hand side, I took this out in my sketchbook, and I showed my my agent who I'd left. I met up with her, she was there, and she said, it's nice, but it's not for children anymore. And I bumped into someone else who I'd been working with in the children's book illustration agent industry, and they told me how lonely it looked. And then I burst into tears because it was lonely. I was lonely. It was lonely work. Like I was feeling lonely, and it felt like someone had really seen me through this work for the first time publicly, because I've been sharing a lot of this online, but not in person. I hadn't really met any other illustrators or people who knew what I was doing in person. So I think those 2 comments could have quite easily made me think, I'm not going to go back into children's books. But instead, I just felt like I want to make some work that's got a bit of narrative in, and I think I want to start adding people to the work. So when I came back, it was that Easter half term in lecturing, and I sat and I just drew from my Bologna photos. So the work on the right hand side is all the work I was doing, and the bigger piece with the girl on the bike. So this would have been like April 2019, and it was this piece that my now publishers, my designer, saw this work on my Instagram. And it wasn't until like November that year that she then contacted me to have a meeting about doing a children's book. So it took all that time, and I had no idea until after I've met them that they'd even noticed this work. But this is the work I started making after Bologna. And this again is more work. So you can just see the color, like the life is back into this. You can see through the work how I was feeling. I was also doing Folktale Week, and I was sort of really building on wanting to add more narrative into the work. I wasn't really thinking about approaching publishers or writing a full children's book again, but I was just really enjoying playing with materials, being out on location, drawing as much as I possibly could, and working within narrative. And then that year, my brother was out in New Zealand. My brother's amazingly talented. He's a stop motion animator. He worked on the last Chicken Run film. He's worked on all sorts of these amazing Aardman projects. He also animates for a children's TV show called Kiri and Lou, which is a New Zealand TV show. If you've got kids, watch it. It's amazing. He's amazing. He's got all the patience. Out of the 2 of us, he got all the patience because he sits and makes models move like for 2 seconds and it will take him a whole day. And if something takes me longer than like 20 minutes, I'm like, why isn't this finished? Why isn't this finished yet? So he's got all the patience in the world, but he was out in New Zealand animating for Kiri and Lou, and he said, come out for Christmas. It was my 30th birthday. So it was December 2019. And I drew for the whole trip, really. As anytime we were in the car, I was drawing. Anytime we stopped, I was drawing. I just really wanted to document this trip. And just before I'd gone, I'd had 2 meetings with publishers who'd reached out. So all of a sudden, towards the end of 2019, 2 children's book publishers got in touch and said, have you thought about illustrating again? We've seen your work online. We've seen the narrative stuff you've been doing. We'd love you to work on something. And one of the publishers had said to me, work on something and come back to us in the new year. Let's have a meeting in January. So when I got back from New Zealand, I don't know if anyone's ever done that trip with the time zones, but I was so jet lagged. I was waking up at like 3 a.m. And this is the weird work I was making at 3 a.m. inspired by our trip that we'd done to, I'm going to pronounce this really badly, but it was near Pancake Rocks in New Zealand, which is the west coast. It's the west coast, because a guy came up to me when I was drawing and shouted it in my ear because it was so windy and wild. He was like, welcome to the wild west coast. It's the only reason I remember. But we went to this trip to the west coast of the South Island of New Zealand, and my 3 a.m. jet lagged brain was just pulling all of this stuff that I'd seen over a month and drawn, and was making this very bizarre, weird children's book, which I then got on the train and went to London, still a bit jet lagged, and like presented this bizarre collection of work. And that publisher was like, yes, develop it. Eventually it never became something, but I still hold this real sweet spot for this story that maybe will never become anything, but it was such a like almost out of body experience that I made it in the middle of the night, inspired by all this stuff I was doing. But then the other publisher who I'd met just before I went to New Zealand was Big Picture Press, who under Bonnier, they also are part of Templar, so they're sort of an offshoot of Templar children's books. And they said, would you like to work on a project? And this was just around, so this was going into then March, April 2020. And they'd said to me, what do you want to work on? And I'd been up to London to see them. And I just remember having to catch myself and stop and, on these busy London streets, just being completely overwhelmed with all the sounds and sights and noises and lights. And I just remember stopping it, and it was like wintry time, and it was all dark, and it was beautiful and so busy. And I just remember thinking this would make such a nice picture book about just stopping in a busy city and really noticing those moments. So I pitched that to them. I said I didn't want to write it because my previous agent had told me I couldn't write. So at this point, I was still unagented, and I'd been told for so long that I couldn't write, that I said I didn't want to write it. So they paired me with an author who wrote this amazing book about this very busy city and noticing things in a busy city. And I started illustrating the work, but it was lockdown, and I was in Devon taking my daily walk by the sea, and I was trying to illustrate this book that was not my day-to-day life. It was not what I was witnessing. And I sort of, they were getting me to sample for this book, and I sort of turned around and said, actually, I don't think this is the right book for me. And at that point, I had nothing else lined up. The other book, they'd said, this is really nice and very weird, but we're doing something similar, so not for us, thank you. This book just didn't feel like the right fit. So I said, no, actually, I don't want to do this. And at the same time, it was very bizarre. I got contacted by 4 different publishers within a couple of months. And I asked one of them about it recently, and they said, you could see that we could see from the work you were putting out that you were happy and you were ready to take on a project. And that was really interesting because I can now see it when I do a presentation like this. I can see the way that I was feeling more confident in the work, that I was feeling happy with the work, that I was developing a new visual way of working that felt very consistent. But at the time, I couldn't see that. But another publisher got in touch and said, we'd love you to illustrate this story we've got. It's about noticing small things in a busy city. And I was like, no, I've just turned that project down. I can't, no, sorry. So I was doing my daily walks. I was going around near where I lived in Plymouth. There was this lovely park by the sea, and I used to go sit under these trees before I started lecturing online. And I started noticing these trees more and more, and I kept thinking, like asking questions, because I was doing all the journaling, that we all did, that I no longer do. And I was asking these questions to these trees as well, and that's where What Do You See When You Look at a Tree came from. So the publisher got back in touch about 3 or 4 months later and were like, we'd still like to work with you. What do you want to work on? And I was like, well, I've got this idea about this tree. And they were like, yeah, that sounds great. Let's work on that together. So that was my lockdown project, was working on What Do You See When You Look at a Tree. Yeah.
And did that change how you thought about your ability to write as well, given that it grew out of your own experience directly?
My team at Big Picture Press, when I started working on What Do You See When You Look at a Tree, just believed in me so much. And I remember when What Do You See When You Look at a Tree came out, and I emailed them and I was like, thank you for taking a risk on me and working on this book. And they emailed back and they were like, this was never a risk for us. But I always saw it as that they were taking a risk, because I'd been told for years that I could not write, that I should go on a writing course, that I was not a good writer. And my editor who worked on What Do You See When You Look at a Tree, Joanna McInerney, she held my hand through the whole process, and she worked with me on every step of the way of writing. So I would write something, I would send it to her, she would send it back, I would write something, she would work on it, she'd send it back to me, I'd rewrite it, and we had this really nice backwards and forwards of writing. And I feel like it was I was very supported doing What Do You See When You Look at a Tree, but it gave me so much confidence that when I've written my next few books, I'm now at a point where I feel like I genuinely feel like an author. Like I genuinely feel like I can write. And I did not feel like this in 2020. Like, yeah. Does that answer that question? Is that like,
It does. It
yeah.
does. Yeah, it's really nice to hear your journey with it as well. Thank you.
Yeah, because I think we can always be, we're always we can always be told the negative thing, and it can be so easy to listen to that and let it become someone's opinion of you, to become, you take it on board and it becomes what you are. But
Mhm.
and I did that with writing. When I met them, I said I can't write, and I said that, like, I can't write. It didn't, and because I'd been told it for so long that I genuinely believed it. Whereas now I love writing. I go to London Writers Salon. They do four a day, 4 sessions a day of 1 hour writing, like co-working, but for writing.
Right.
And I try and go to the 8 a.m. one like a couple of times a week, and I love it. I love writing now, and I feel really, if anyone tells you you're not very good at something and you can't do it, just go prove them wrong. And
That that so often happens with drawing, doesn't
yeah,
it? That
it
a
does.
teacher will accidentally sort of say something that puts somebody off in teenagehood, and they won't draw for 20 years.
Yeah, yeah, it does. But like, don't let someone's opinion of you become that thing. Like, it's not true, that's just someone's opinion. Just, yeah. But so What Do You See When You Look at a Tree, I developed it. These are some of the development things and sketches, and then the big image at the bottom is how I got towards the end of the project, and then I had to make the final artwork, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this. So this is originally what you see when you look at a tree was going to look like. And I remember doing it, and I'd figured out that I had a certain amount of time to finish the artwork, and if I didn't stay on track, I was not going to finish on my deadline, and it was going to be late. And I remember crying and emailing them and being like, I hate it, and I don't want to do it. I can't do this. It's not what I want the book to look like. And my team were like, we'll have another month and go figure out what you want to do. I said, I can either make the book and it's going to look like this, but I don't want it to look like this, or I need like a week to figure it out, and then I'll hit my deadline. And they were like, take a month and figure it out. So that the next week, my lovely friend Frances Ives came down, and we went location drawing around Cornwall for a week solid, which I don't have any of the work in here, but oh, it just opened me up and freed me up so much. Being with Frances is a joy anyway, but I felt like it just made me be so playful out on location, and then I brought that back into the work that I was doing for what you see when you look at a tree. So the work on the left is the work that I did for what you see when you look at a tree, and I did all the drawings for that book in my sketchbooks. So everything was done in a Royal Talons sketchbook, and it was just so much more playful after that week sat on the coast.
Mm-hmm.
Drawing with Frances and playing with materials. So that's how the work, it's cleaned up and it's a bit more polished, but that is the final artwork in the book. And then I'm going to go through these quite quickly I'm really sorry that this is going to be, if you're here to hear more about children's books, this is kind of where this children's book journey sort of ends, because there's some personal work that I would love to share. But Time Runs Like a River came out. That was the next book I worked with them. So I had a 1-book deal with Big Picture Press, and I did What You See When You Look at a Tree, and then they came back and they offered me a 2-book deal. So the next book was Time Runs Like a River, and for that book I went out specifically and did drawings around rivers. So these are drawings from my sketchbooks of the River Dart, which is near us in Devon, and then at the same time, as I'd written Time Runs Like a River, I'd also written this very slightly different text, which was A Home is a Nest, and that came out this year. But what was really lovely about A Home is a Nest is this owl drawing from my sketchbook that I've got in there. The top owl drawing was an image that was meant to go into What Do You See When You Look at a Tree, and it was really nice. We actually ended up getting cut. It didn't follow the right format of the book. It was the wrong image for the wrong, it was the wrong image for What Do You See When You Look at a Tree, but it was the perfect image for A Home is a Nest. So it was so nice just to see that the work that gets cut sometimes, or the work that doesn't fit in a certain book, it's so nice to see it then fit into the right book, the book it's meant to be in. So but were there any questions about picture book things? Because I'm going to chat about, is there any?
Well, Gemini has asked about your experience with publishers and whether there's a piece of advice you'd give to new illustrators.
Ooh, that is a good question. I think my experience with working with publishers has been a bit different, because my first publishers that I worked with, Macmillan, I met them through doing the children's book illustration MA, then having an agent, and I'd been highly commended for the Macmillan Awards. So that's a great award to enter if you are. It's now open to all. It used to just be for students, but now as long as you're an unpublished illustrator, you can enter that one. So I would definitely keep your eye out for things like picture hooks, the Macmillan Awards, the Bologna Children's Book Fair Publishing Awards, illustration awards, all the things you can enter. I think publishers look at that. So I think they're great places to be seen by by publishers, if that's what you're looking for. But I think then working with publishers, I'm really lucky when I've worked with Macmillan on those first two books, although I don't connect with that work anymore. I'm still such good friends with those publishers. Like, I see them every year at Bologna. We have a catch up. They came to my drinks to celebrate Homes and Nests this year. They're so supportive and lovely. And then my team at Big Picture Press have just been a dream. And I just knowing, I suppose, a good bit of advice is when working on a picture book is knowing what's really important to you in a book, and then knowing what is okay to cut from a book and being okay with that. Like that owl image, I loved it when it was in what you see when you look at a tree, and I was so gutted that we were taking it out of the book, but I knew to make the book better, we had to lose that image, and then it's found its right home in A Home is a Nest. So yeah, knowing what is really important to you and what's like I can't change this in a book, but also knowing that sometimes you have to lose things and cut things from picture books, and to make them the best book possible. Yeah. Okay, right, I'm going to share. So I think I mentioned at the beginning, I forgot I put all these photos in, but I mean, in between all these images that I've showed you, there's so many drawings, so many sketchbooks. But I found I have, or I had, I don't see her anymore, which I had a creative consultant, which was sort of like a therapist for my creativity, called Elaine at Studio 1850. And we don't see each other anymore because I don't need to see her anymore, but I wish I was seeing her still, because she was the best and really helped me with my creative practice and just reflecting on my creativity and helping me push through things like feeling imposter syndrome and all those things. But I remember Elaine always used to pick me up and remind me of this, that I said to her once that I'm happiest and making my best work when I'm drawing for myself and watching MasterChef Australia, which is what I said to her. But it doesn't have to be MasterChef Australia, although if you've not watched it, it's great. I really enjoy it. That was my lockdown. Like, I loved watching MasterChef Australia during lockdown. But the work over here on the right-hand side, these are drawings that I've done for myself and that I love. And I have to always remind myself that having these personal projects, drawing for myself, life drawing, which I'm about to share, printmaking, which I'm about to share, or having a sketchbook habit, makes the best work for me. Like, this is where the best work comes from, the best ideas come from. I'm the happiest when I'm making my own stuff. So I make sure as much as possible that I can squeeze in my own personal work. MasterChef Australia is optional. Like, it doesn't have to be MasterChef Australia, but think of maybe, yeah, if there's something that you also love watching, replace it with that. But I think having a personal project is so important for me. And I'm going to go back in time very slightly here. But it's important, I think, to share that we were chatting about this before, but life drawing online just opened up so much for everyone, I think. And I think there's so many people here who will know this, and that I don't need to say how amazing life drawing online is. But the first online life drawing session I did is the stuff, actually I put it in the wrong hand side, but it's the stuff on the right hand side. Joe and Holly from Henley School of Art invited me to come along to one of their online life drawing classes, and I checked my phone. It was September 2020 was my first online life drawing class, and I was so used to going to, I hadn't been to a life drawing class in ages, but I was so used to going to those ones in person where you'd have the same model every week, that when I signed up for the one the next week, I was really surprised, like, why isn't it the same model? Why isn't it the same model? Which now is mental to think that. But I was going to Henley, I think around this time I signed up for Draw Brighton, but I couldn't get my head around the patron. I mean, now it seems silly, but I couldn't get my head around the patron. But I definitely joined up to Draw Brighton around this time. And then the end of the year was sort of a bit of a blur. And me and my friend Harriet Lowther would spend a lot of time playing Animal Crossing on Switch, and we sat on Zoom and would just play Animal Crossing. We would get up and we would play Animal Crossing all day. I would then maybe have to do some lecturing in my pajamas, and then I would go back. It was like around that time that lockdown came back in, that sort of Christmas, January time. So one January morning, Harriet said, shall we get up early tomorrow morning and do this online live drawing class with Miss Muse Draws? It was drawing Topaz in the Bath, and it was actually hosted in Australia, but we didn't realize that because we weren't doing regular live drawing. So we were like, yeah, sure, let's do it. So Topaz was in Edinburgh. The class was being hosted in Australia, and we got up early and didn't just play Animal Crossing in our pajamas. We were doing this live drawing class at 8 o'clock in the morning, which these are the drawings from that class. So the top two are mine, and then the bottom two are Harriet's. And then she was like, should we do it again tomorrow? And I was like, yeah, let's do it again tomorrow. So, and we invited Francis Ives along, and we were all members of Draw Brighton. So we used the circus, the Draw
Yeah.
Circus pack. And we drew, this is the next drawing I did. So
I love that in there you've got the host of Miss Muse Draws as well in the
I
drawing circus. Yeah, the drawing circus, the one with the red fan, that's Michaela who runs Miss Muse Draws, who moved to Australia after modelling for that session.
did not know that.
There's
Wow.
nice circularity to it
Full
all.
circle. Well, this is really nice because so what this then kicked off was, I don't think I've actually got any slides from it. No, I don't. But what this kicked off is that we then set up a thing which we affectionately named Breakfast Club. And if you've heard me talk before, I'll have spoken about this before, but so me and Harriet drew on the first day, and then me, Harriet, and Francis drew on the next day. And then we were like, this is great. Should we do it again tomorrow, 8 a.m.? And we invited along Lucy Salmon and Sarah Dyer and Becca Hall and Emily Mackenzie. And every morning for months and months and months, we would meet up at 8 a.m. and we would draw. And it could be anything. Like the first person there had to put on music, and then we would dance. I can't imagine even doing this anymore, but we would put on music. We would have images, random stuff. We drew all the time, and it just became this absolute lifeline of drawing. And then I finally figured out how Draw Brighton worked on Patreon. It started coming along every Wednesday. So um I would do like every Wednesday, every session I could possibly do. And I think I shared all my sketchbooks to my patrons recently, and there's so many where I'm like, this is life drawing, Draw Brighton, Draw Brighton, Draw Brighton, Draw Brighton, Draw Brighton. But if you're wondering how to improve, and this is what I tell everyone, is if you're wondering on how to improve your drawing skills, join Draw Brighton and go to the Wednesday sessions, because you will, in doing live drawing consistently will improve your life, will improve your illustration and your drawing quicker than anything else, because you're playing with absolutely everything. You're doing observational work, you're looking at form, you're looking at shape, you're looking at tone, you're looking at line, you're looking at weight of body, you're looking at everything. And all of those things are transferable skills into other areas of illustration or other areas of drawing. But I've never improved more quicker than doing Draw Brighton regularly, like ever. So my drawings on the left-hand side are a life drawing. I think it's Topaz again, and then Evita. And then the work in the middle is illustration work. So what I loved, I don't do this anymore, but what I loved from around this time is that my life drawing then fed into my illustration work, and then my illustration work then fed back into my life drawing work. So I've got life drawing on the left, illustration work sort of making an L shape. Then I've got Evita again, which I found this drawing and I was like, that's so good. Like, why have I never shared this drawing before? It's such a nice drawing. And then I've got, I can't remember the model's name at the top right. Um,
Oh, do you know, I think it's Michaela again.
is it? Okay.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it is, yeah.
But
Um,
on the modeling side, not the session leading side.
yeah, that's weird. I feel like I need to thank Michaela. I feel like she's been,
I'll share the recording with her. She'll be
thank
delighted.
you. Yeah, she's been like this huge part of my journey and I didn't even know. But so that's Michaela, and then that's Trixie, who then came, me and Trixie became really good friends and she started modeling for my patron. We don't work together anymore because she's probably the busiest person I know. She's so busy, but she's such an amazing person. And I felt so grateful that she came and did all these modeling sessions for us. And she would do, this was sort of like a almost like a prompt class. So she came up with these prompts. So she was lying down and then she got us to add on that she was, imagine that she was floating on clouds and pigs were floating by, and just what an amazing class. But so you can see how both are kind of feeding into each other here, and this is sort of 2023. And then through that, through the confidence of doing Draw Brighton, I started going to in-person live drawing. So I started going to like a Thursday evening live drawing, and around this time I was doing Draw Brighton on a Wednesday, all sessions, as many as possible. Then I was going to my evening Thursday live drawing class, and then at my evening Thursday live drawing class, I met some other people who were running a Sunday session. So I started going to Sunday life drawing, which was 2 hours, one pose, which if you told me that when I first started life drawing, I couldn't physically get through the 20-minute portraits. Like that was too much time for me. I used to just go make a cup of tea and just wait for the last 5 minutes and then do it really quickly. But 2 hours, one pose. And I've never really shared any of this work before. And I can't draw like this anymore. I was doing so much drawing, life drawing, that my skills were just getting better and better. And I would take along like every single material. I had a routine. I would get to the class early. I would make sure I got this fold out table because it had a ledge around the side, so I could dump all my pencils out on it and they wouldn't roll onto the floor. And then I liked to sit with the light behind that in a really odd place. So I would go and get my spot, and then we would sit for 2 hours and draw on a Sunday morning. And then from doing that, I then got chatting to the guy who ran the all day sessions, and I would go and do one pose all day, draw one pose, not me modeling, drawing. I would go and draw one pose all day. And again, like I can't draw like this anymore because I don't do this anymore. Um, I think it's such a skill. It's a bit like lifting weights. Like
Mhm.
if you haven't lifted a really heavy weight for a while, you can't then go back and lift a really heavy weight. So I don't think I could go back and draw like this anymore. This was from a lot of life drawing for
Mhm.
me, but it's really nice to be able to share the work because it's just all sat in a portfolio. Phil says sometimes like that he's gonna wait till I go and run one of these retreats and then take all the work and run an exhibition without me knowing. Otherwise I'd never share any of it. But I feel really proud of this work, and I would have never done any of this without Draw Brighton. So I feel really grateful. Jake, thank you for like,
Oh,
thank you.
it's such a treat, and it's really lovely to know that it feeds so directly into your kind of wider practice as well. Because I've always been a big champion for life drawing, but it can be hard to convince people sometimes that drawing naked people doesn't have to be the end point, but it is exercise for feeding into so many other forms of kind of creative practice. So it's really nice to know that that kind of thread has run through for you.
Oh, massively, like so much. And I'm sure there's other people here who have felt that as well. That and if anyone is thinking, or if anyone ever thinks like I just want to improve drawing skills, I can't recommend life drawing enough. Like you will improve quicker than anything else will, from life drawing. But I thought I'd just end. I really wanted to share. I know we're you know what, we're not too bad with time. Me and
No, we're good.
both,
We're good.
we thought we'd really run over, but I've been very speedy. So I just wanted to share about printmaking because uh, the reason why I don't come to Draw Brighton Wednesdays anymore, and the reason why done less and less live drawing is because I've been doing more and more printmaking. And my printmaking day is now Wednesday, which means I can't make live drawing on a Wednesday. But printmaking has become, I've really enjoyed printmaking. I've really enjoyed printmaking over the last sort of year, year and a half. And it started because I was jelly plate printing. So the image of the fox on the left is from it was about, there's probably a patron here who knows. Julie's here. Julie yesterday was my PA in my live call. She was really good at finding out the dates, things. Julie, I'm not asking you to do that, but someone's probably going to go, oh, Emma, that was 2023 or something, 2022. I was using jelly plate to make textures to then draw over the top of. And one of my really lovely patrons, Marsha Valk, I don't know if Marsha's here, but Marsha sent me the loveliest message on Patreon and was like, I can see you're using jelly plates. She works with jelly plate. She's like an official jelly plate person. And she was like, do you want me to come show you like how to do it properly in a nice, she wrote it really nicely, because I was trying to make these monoprints on the jelly plate, and I was making these images like bottom left where the paint was coming off all bobbly, and I was doing it really weird, and I wasn't really cleaning my jelly plates properly, and I was making a real mess, and I didn't know what a jelly plate could really do. So Marsha came and she did a workshop for us on Patreon about how you could use mixed media on a jelly plate, and it was like it set off all these things in my mind of what I could do with the jelly plate. So I started doing loads of jelly plate printing, and it was like a gateway drug into printmaking. It was like a slippery slope that the more of this I did, the more excited about printmaking I got. So I started, I was still doing a live drawing at the time. So that is from one of your photo packs, Jake. That's done on the jelly plate. And I was doing, don't look at the hands. The hands are awful, but the rest is nice. And then I started thinking like, I'm going to take some of my landscapes into jelly plate printing from my sketchbook. So I was making these landscapes. And then from this, I got asked to come up, invited to do a residency in the Lake District. So I worked with Another Place Hotel, and I took over there. This is their like pizza restaurant in a beautiful glass house. And I took it over and just made a mess and did all this jelly plate printing. And then when I got back, I started looking, there's a print studio near us in Exeter. And if you live in Devon, they're called Double Elephant, and it's a really affordable printmaking studio in Devon. And they were doing all these classes. So I was like, I'm just going to sign up to loads of printmaking classes and just see what I like. So I did the kitchen lithography class that they did, which I think you've done on Draw. Have you done
Yes.
this? Yeah. So I did the kitchen lithography one, and I made the images on the left, and then I signed up to like a 5-week something course, and this was a really bad aquatint that I did. And then I did a mono printing class, and I got known as the cat girl, which I didn't want to get known as, but I just thought I'm gonna keep with cats and just keep trying different printmaking techniques until I find one that sticks. And then my screen print tutor, who helped me screen print the Sex Dungeon book, now works at Double Elephant. So my screen printing tutor from uni when I was like 18, 19, 20 now works at Double Elephant. And she was running a mono printing class through screen printing. And I made all these cats on the left-hand side during that session. And she said to me, why don't you sign up and become a member and come in every Wednesday, and we can work together and start developing these prints. So I did all these mono prints, and then I was making these, I went in and did more mono printing. And then these are the prints that I'm working on now. So what I've been trying to do, I love lithography prints, but we don't have I think my nearest lithography course is Bristol. And I've also eyed up the one in Edinburgh. My friend Emily Mackenzie sent it to me. I think she wants me to come visit again and also go do the lithography course, which I'd love to do. But I'm trying to get as much of that lithography texture into my screen prints. That's my current sort of obsession. So this was a print that I finished. I've actually not got, this one isn't very well aligned, but this is one I finished recently. And you can see the color separations on the left hand side. So screen printing is, I'm exposing each color onto a screen, and then I'm layering up those colors, and to make this print, this 4-color print. And then I did a cat one, which again, like, I really needed to break away from cats because I was getting known as the cat woman in the printmaking rooms. But then this one is the one that this is my most recent print. So the owl one, I printed this on Wednesday, and now I'm about to figure out the color separations for this screen print. And it feels, again, I can see how this work is feeding into my illustration work, and the illustration work is feeding into the printmaking. And yeah, it's just it's very satisfying the way that that happens. And this is my last slide of the talk, and I didn't overrun, which is, yeah, we really did think I was going to. So yeah, this is my most recent work, and this is what I'm working on at the moment. I'm also doing some picture book work, doing a couple of picture book I've got a picture book deal with Big Picture Press, and I'm working on my next book in the series for that. And I'm also working on another illustration project, which is, yeah, really exciting. It's yeah.
And it's really lovely to hear how this relationship between process, the printmaking, and life drawing, I suppose, the process is then feeding into the kind of development of content and imagery, and I guess then that how that leads into story. So
Yeah.
like, because I think it's so common for people to imagine that that one starts with a story, then illustrates a story, and then works out the process that should be used for those illustrations. Whereas actually, like, I don't know, it feels that you're kind of you're drawing inspiration from such a range of different sources.
Yeah, always. And I also think that I'm writing a story at the moment. It's the first fiction because at the moment I work with narrative nonfiction at Big Picture Press, and I'm writing a story at the moment which is fiction, and that's been inspired by a drawing I did, and that drawing was inspired by some printmaking I was doing. And so it's all like feeding, it all sort of feeds together. And
Mm.
these personal projects that I'm doing, like the imagery I'm making in these screen prints, is inspired because I was struggling with I wasn't really drawing much in my sketchbook for myself. So I told my patrons that I'm going to work on another 6-week project, and um you'll all come with me, come along, let's see what happens. So those, I haven't got any of those drawings in here, but those drawings from those sketchbooks drawings that I did are now, that's what this cat one was, and the this one, these images are both from that personal sketchbook project. So those projects are so important for me, like having a personal project drawing for myself. It's where all my best work comes from, and then that might inspire a story, or that might inspire something else. So yeah, it's yeah.
Do you often kind of dig back through old sketchbooks to kind of to bring out some ideas that you might have forgotten about?
Again, I'm really lucky to have Patreon because it makes me reflect a lot.
Uh-huh.
The stuff I'm sharing on Patreon really makes me do that. Um, and I'd recommend, it's a weird thing to do what I do. I get my work out and then I talk about the work and I film it, and then, but I can't I can't recommend that enough, to just get your work out and even just film yourself talking about it just for you. Like,
Mhm,
it's such an interesting practice. So I do, but only because I'm doing it for Patreon. But
mhm.
I it's sometimes I'll make work, and then it's so easy to close the sketchbook, put it on a shelf, and forget that it's happened. and almost squirrel it away. Like all those life drawings are squirreled away. I got them out and they're like dusty because I've not, they've been sat in a drawer. But I should do it more for myself, really. I should do it because it's such a good thing to do. Yeah.
I tell you what, as well, if Phil ever does exhibit those life drawings for you, I'll be at that exhibition. I desperately
Yeah.
want to see that.
Oh,
um,
that's fine.
I'll just ask a couple of questions if that's all right, and then we'll draw things to a
Yeah,
close.
yeah. Should I leave stuff up on screen? It's quite nice.
That's lovely to see,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Because Holly's actually asked with these screen prints. She's just said, are the layers hand drawn before you expose the screen? So, could you elaborate on the process of this one that we're looking at?
Yeah. I wonder if I've got, I think it's all in the, I have like a screen printing bag now, which
Uh-huh.
stays packed and I don't unpack it, but I have got some, I don't think I've even got any of my films in there because I try not to want, because so yeah, so I, yes, they're all hand drawn. I work on, I don't think it's actually called Mark Resist, but we'll call it Mark Resist. It's like a film. I think we use something else, but Mark Resist will work. It's like a film, almost like an acid. It's like cloudy acetate with a texture on, and then you can draw onto that. So you can. I use as many different materials as possible onto that, but they have to be black. So like black ink, black acrylic, black neo color, black wing pencils. I'll draw physically onto the Mark Resist and then we expose that onto a screen. So I don't think I've got an exposed screen, but this is a screen that I've then drawn onto. So imagine I've got this screen that I've coated with a green liquid. This, I've been doing this a year, I should know these terms, but like we coat the screen and then we expose the image onto the screen
Mhm.
that I've hand drawn onto the Mark Resist film. So yeah, all the layers for this are hand drawn. Yeah.
That's really great to hear. Thank you. And just returning to an earlier question that somebody asked, and then I think we'll wrap things up. Thank you for being so generous, Emma, as well, with sharing all of this. It's such a great insight. But Anita asked a question, just going back to your children's books, that the sketchbook work informed the children's books, and just wanted to know, were the final images that went into the children's books actually a direct copy of what was in your sketchbooks? Were they made directly from the sketchbooks?
Yeah, hang on, let me just, so yeah, it's this one, isn't it? So what do you see when you look at a tree? I did all the artwork in my sketchbooks. So I'd used a sketchbook for so long that it felt weird not to do it in a sketchbook. So I'd recommend it and I wouldn't recommend it because the problem about doing it in a sketchbook is that sketchbook is not the right size for my picture book. So what I then had to do was scan this in and then Photoshop. Every page had to be photoshopped to take out the gutter, so the middle of the sketchbook, and then also make it fit the actual dimensions of the picture book, which none of them did. Like I didn't work to scale or to size on that book at all. And I can't, if I could go back and just shout at myself and be like, please, just please don't do this. So like the image of the top image, for example, if you see it, I have got a copy. So that top image of the granddad sat in the chair was, I don't know why I did this, but so it didn't fit the page, and I didn't leave enough room for the text. Like all the things you're meant to do when you work on a picture book, but I did not know that. So this is how it ended up in the book. And I've had to Photoshop the bookcase smaller to leave enough space and then move it to the middle, and then these bits don't exist in the drawing, and I don't think any of this existed. So it's all I'm quite good at Photoshop now, because I have to be, because I had to put it together. I had to almost this a lot of my picture books, I've shared this on Patreon, where I'll share a Photoshop file of my picture book spreads, and they look quite hand done and traditionally done, but all of this is like a jigsaw puzzle, which I basically cut all of these bits out, and I can move it all around and put it back together, which I don't recommend at all. So when I did Time Runs Like a River, all that artwork was done on Arches paper, and I
Mhm.
drew it to scale, and I added on the bleed, and I made it all proper. But what I found that when I did that is that I really was overworking some of the spreads, because the paper was so much thicker and could take almost anything. I could throw anything at it, and it would just, the paper would be like, yeah, throw some more at me. Like, whereas when I worked in the Royal Town sketchbook, the paper was so thin, if I put too much on it, it would, you get almost like a hole in the paper. So it stopped me, by working on the cheaper paper, it stopped me from overworking when I work. And then I did Time Runs Like a River and A Home Is a Nest on Arches paper, and I drew all the pages out, and I added on the bleed. And then for my new book that I'm doing with Big Picture Press, which will be the next in the series, so it'll be in the next in this format series. Uh, I'm doing on moleskin paper. So I've bought moleskin sketchbooks, and then I've pulled the paper out of the sketchbook, and it's big enough, it's sort of thin enough that I'm not able to overwork stuff. But it's big enough that I can actually work to scale and to size. And there's still a lot of Photoshop that goes on in the artwork, um, but I don't have to like reformat or like rebuild a bookshelf anymore.
Well,
Right.
we can all learn from your earlier mistakes. That's
Yeah,
really helpful.
please do. Please learn from my mistakes.
Oh, thank you so much, Emma. Thanks for being so generous with your time and your explanations and just sharing all of this with us, and for being so candid as well about the ups and downs of that whole journey. It's really, really kind of you and really exciting to see where your work's going at the moment as well.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Jake. I meant what I know we said at the beginning we've never chatted before, but I really meant what I said about Draw Brighton and life drawing. It was such a lifeline during lockdown, and I'm sure a lot of people have felt that way about Draw Brighton. But then for me, what it led to, and like giving me the confidence in my drawings, just been amazing. So yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you. Um, and I'm going to draw things to a close there. I'll just pop a link to the
Thank
Draw Brighton Patreon, actually. That's perfect chance for a
you.
plug. And I've also shared a link to Emma's Patreon as well there in the chat. But it's a good moment to say that all of this only works with all of you lovely lot coming and actually joining in as well. So thank you all, everybody, for joining us today. But thank you especially, Emma, for such a wonderful talk. I'm going to